Good evening, everyone. Good evening. How are you all doing tonight? We have a very exciting show at 10 p.m. Eastern. After about 40 minutes of my own commentary, I'll have Sabby Sabs and the Bank Sisters on to talk about Camp Dada, their activist efforts, and hopefully have a good conversation promoting that, which is coming up, I believe, at the end of this week. So before then, though, we're going to talk about China. As you know, there's been massive heat waves all across the world. China being a big um, part of this, a huge part of this, right? They've experienced just unprecedented temperatures, fires, and I'm going to cover an unlikely source in the Australian media, which wrote there was an op ed in the Sydney Morning Herald talking about China's environmental progress. And then I'm going to show you some interesting things that were happening that might answer the question, can China save the world? Well, in my opinion, it's going to be a big part of how to combat, right? And will lead the way in how to combat this kind of ecological devastation wrought on by centuries of capitalism. But before we get to that, please like the video. Like this video. Subscribe to the channel if you're new to the channel. Hit that notifications bell. And I must say, due to people's generosity, I'm only $9 per month. So that's 2 subscribers of $5 per month on Patreon from my goal of beating kind of this storm. There's a lot going on in my personal life, and surely I will be needing upgrades soon on equipment. So I am also rebranding soon. I've been very humbled by the generosity of viewers who have such incredible talents who are helping me rebrand. So that's coming up next month. So you definitely want to subscribe and support the show, because I definitely want to support those who support me as well. So patreon.com/Dhaiphong. That link is in the description, and you can find other ways to support me as well, Substack, etc. So I'm going to say hello to people in the chat before I get started. Hello, Alex. How are you doing? Third World Rising, says Alex. Yes, indeed. Hello, Kenneth. Dooby dooby doo. Yes, we will have Sabby on. She is on the prowl, you could say. I appreciate, Nadia, your compliment about my analysis of patriotic socialism or socialist patriotism, what have you. I tried to, I try to keep it away from personalities, because that's just not who I am. I do not do the whole, well, this personality said this person said that. It really is about the battle of ideas, and we should engage in that in good faith, especially if we consider ourselves communists. If that truly is Marxist Leninist, if people are calling themselves that, and we identify the same, then we need to have good faith conversations. It doesn't happen very much in the land of sectarianism, which is the United States. But Tech Lee, hello. Any guesses or takes on the source of China's environmental news? Yes, it will be the Sydney Morning Herald of all places, right? From the really not the citadel of anti-China hawkism, of the anti-China hawks. That would be the United States. But Australia, as John Pilger said in our interview, Australia is basically a satellite of the United States that has absolutely no independence on foreign policy, and arguably, in terms of its media apparatus, more openly. I mean, in the United States, you have a variant, right? You have Fox News, etc., which will be very openly anti-China, right? Not just the humanitarian interventionist kind of atrocity propaganda, but very openly, China bad. That's much of the Australian media. So it's very interesting that this, and I'm going to read it over with all of you in a minute. So, what's up, Tex? Hi, hi, hi. Hello, Desert Mantis. Hello. Hello, hello, hello. Welcome back, Petamilo. Hello to all the moderators, by the way. Big Teal, hello. Hi, Kenneth. Good to see you. Hello, Joseph. Hi, Megan. And hello, 31st Century Socialism. Got a joint. That's good. All power to you. Hello. Hi, hi, hi. Welcome, Loa. And yeah, rebranding. When I say rebranding, Lou, I do not mean my politics. I just mean the design, the channel design, channel art. I have some very generous folks here who watch this program who are helping me out with some of that because that is not my specialty. I am not a designer. I mean, I got some nice compliments about how I do my very rudimentary thing, but that's not me. So I'm getting some help on that, and hopefully we can get that rolled out very, very, very soon within the next week or two. Hello, hello, the traveler. Welcome, welcome. Laugh, I believe that says, but good to see you. Hello, Tim. My live stream doesn't appear unless you visit your channel. Oh, that's really unfortunate. I really hope that's not true. Please, anyone else confirm. But yes, there is a lot of YouTube censorship here on this channel, a lot of demonetization as well. So, yes, a lot of RBNism. So I am actually working on Rockfin. It's been kind of slow for me. Um, I really want to update my art first. I don't want to go in with what I have because I think I need to step that up. So I'm getting help with that, and that's coming very soon. Rockfin. Um, anyway, so chat's very active. Welcome everyone. Um, so yeah, well, now it looks like we got a little short of a half hour, a little over a half hour. So let's get right to it then. Like the video as you're watching. Let's get right to this. So the world is burning. Europe, record temperatures. The United States, massive heat waves. All across the world, these massive heat waves. And this has been very problematic for China. Several weeks, if not much of this season, has been very, very hot. And that's because, right? That's because of climate change. That's because of what capitalism, what global capitalism has done to this planet. And it is an absolute catastrophe right now. It is really hurting people. And this is something that I think we're going to see more and more often. And so, in a situation like this, it can be very easy to get nihilistic. I feel like in the Western world, because there's these blinders on to socialism, that in the Western world, there's a lot of nihilism when it comes to the environment, right? When it comes to climate change, it's like, oh, it's all gloom and doom. We got 10 years and nothing is going to happen. Nothing good is going to happen. The Western world, right? It's all Western centric, Eurocentric, US centric. No one can save us. Well, there was an interesting op-ed written not too long ago this month. I believe it was not a week ago, that I want to share with you from a very unlikely source, the Sydney Morning Herald. So if you've been following anything about Australia, whether helping form AUKUS, the US, UK, Australia, a lot military alliance, whether you're following their increases in their military budget every single year, labeling China a threat, despite import and exports from China being so heavily, vitally important to Australia. It doesn't matter that China is their biggest trade partner by far, that China is Australia's biggest trade partner by far. Australian politics from Mr. Morrison and now to the new Labor government. I don't even know that guy's name, but it doesn't matter. It is a vassal of the United States, and it has been a leading force in this new Cold War, Australia, despite its relative irrelevance. Okay. But I want to share with you an article in the Sydney Morning Herald. This was written a little over a week ago on August 20th by this Nick O'Malley, their climate and environment editor. So the Sydney Morning Herald is no friend of China. The Sydney Morning Herald is really no friend of anybody. It's a corporate outlet. It speaks through the bourgeoisie in Australia and the West. And I want to share with you what this has to say because I think it's very interesting, okay? I think we if you're going to learn about this is a mainstream source, we have to publicize when mainstream sources are admitting to the fact that there is hope out there, and it's just not in the places that we're trained and conditioned to believe it's in. So here we go. This is what Mr. O'Malley had to say. Climate activists and scientists the world over, and here's the US kind of groveling, breathed a deep sigh of relief this week when Joe Biden signed into law the Inflation Reduction Act as America's biggest ever package of climate actions had been rebranded while it was wrestled forcefully through the Senate. It's the law, said Biden on Tuesday. The bill is the biggest step forward on climate ever. Look at that photo. I can't with Joe Biden. That was going viral on the internet for all the wrong reasons. All right, let's keep going. Let's keep going. I got a half hour out before our guests come on, so I can't dilly dally. All right. So the scope of the package is extraordinary. Its various measures will channel 370 billion US dollars. Well, it says 500. Oh, that's Australian dollars. So 370 billion US dollars into programs that, if successful, will see the creation of 60 gigawatts of new renewable energy capacity per year, doubling the amount deployed last year. Amazing, right? But in focusing on the future plans of America, the world risks missing what's already going on in China, where a green revolution is sweeping the economy. In the world's popular imagination, China is built on coal. At the COP26 climate talks in Glasgow in November of last year, China, along with Australia and India, declined to sign a pledge to phase out coal use. In the wake of the pandemic, it stimulated its economy by ramping up coal production so much that climate observation satellites detected new plumes of methane emissions leaking from mines across Inner Mongolia. For years, China's reliance on coal has been used as a rhetorical device in the West for those in the West opposed to taking effective climate action. It was used as an excuse by Donald Trump when he abandoned the Paris Agreement in 2017. Quote, he said China was allowed to build hundreds of coal plants, so we can't build the plants, but they can according to this agreement. So again, China, it's all China's fault. It's all China's fault. We're not doing it. Now, this is where it gets good. But the coal haze has obscured a more crucial truth about China's energy expansion. If pending U.S. efforts on renewable energy are extraordinary, the revolution underway in China is truly staggering. Last year, the U.S. boasted it was to deploy 30 gigawatts of new renewables. In China, the figure could be as high as 180 gigawatts. That's why I laughed. I was like, really? Uh, um, Last year, China alone accounted for 46% of the world's total of new construction of renewable energy infrastructure. So last week, Bloomberg, so this was earlier in August, reported that China's renewable investments for the first half of 22 included large-scale solar totaling 41 billion US dollars, up 173% from the year before, more than 1.5 times larger. So they almost doubled their solar capacity. And investment in new wind projects increased by 107% year on year to 58 billion US dollars. This is not a product of so of course it's the Australian media, so you have to be ready for the propaganda as well. So it's not all good according to this. It's not altruism, he says. Xi Jinping is doing it because he intends that China will dominate these critical industries of the future. As international energy analyst Tim Buckley put it, while China leads the world in coal use, it also leads the world in wind and solar installation and wind and solar manufacturing and electric vehicle production and batteries and hydro and nuclear and ground heat pumps and grid transmission and distribution and in green hydrogen. They literally lead the world in every zero emissions technology today. So it's not for altruism. It's just it's just to dominate the industries, right? But in order to build a renewable energy economy, in order to reduce climate catastrophe and carbon emissions, this is literally what is being promoted by the UN, by even all the Western countries. So when China does it, though, it's not altruism. They just want to dominate the markets. And then why the hell doesn't the US want to dominate the markets? Why doesn't Europe want to dominate the markets? Well, then we got to talk about how capitalism doesn't want to invest right now. They don't want to spend, the capitalists don't want to spend the capital, the constant capital necessary. They don't want to put the money down. They don't want to put the money down on the renewable energy. They don't, because it's very equipment and technologically intensive. That's one of the secrets that they don't tell you about capitalism right now, is that capitalism doesn't want that. Capitalism wants to continue on with what is the most intensive in terms of how to exploit for profit. So that's when they'll invest in new technology, is when it will lead to immediate profits. So she surprised the world with an announcement. Surprised the world, right, at the UN when it said it would stop funding offshore coal power stations, effectively knocking out 70% of the flow of global investment in the industry. So it is making a transition. It's making a real commitment. So China will step up its support for developing countries in developing green and low carbon energy and will not build new coal fire plants projects abroad, she said in a pre-recorded video. Since then, no new coal finance has flowed into China's Belt and Road Initiative. So that was last year. That was 2021. Underlying the pivot from fossil to green, the planet's energy battery manufacturer, CATL of China, this week announced it would build the world's largest new battery making plant in Hungary. An amazing 100 GWH, I don't gigawatts, or I don't know, of annual battery capacity, costing $7 billion to supply Europe's booming electric vehicle market. The impetus behind China's green ambition is reasonably enough self-interest. So again, he's admitting that they're doing really great things, but it's all selfishness, right? It's all selfishness. It couldn't be any other reason. A senior fellow at the Lowy Institute, Richard McGregor, notes that, like other countries, China has identified the pressing threat of climate change. So it's for self interest, but they're also addressing the threat that most progressives and people who are not self interested, they're interested in humanity, but it's self interest when it comes to China, right? When climate change is an issue for China. So, you know, here you have them talking about the issues, right? China's rivers are struggling. There's the infernal heat of this summer up north in China, places like Chongqing. You have the retreat of glaciers, right? There are no climate deniers in China, says McGregor. You can tell this very easily because China's official media is not full of people denying climate change. The propaganda ministry doesn't allow voices which question science. So here you have a life threatening, humanity threatening problem. And these Western imperialist bootlickers want to tell you that China's censorship is the reason why you don't have any climate deniers in the media. Well, maybe it's the fact that the vast majority of people don't want to watch that. Whatever happened to choice, right? Whatever happened to maybe the government wants to play things, wants to provide news that is conducive to what the people want to see, right? There's always this idea that it's, oh, China's government is dictating everything and their media is just sprinkling this propaganda on top of people's faces. And it's just sinking into their pores and they're becoming these automatons, right, for the government. But what if the government also what if the media, China's state media, its public media, what if it understands that people don't want to read climate denialism? I mean, China is a very active country. When they don't want something, they don't buy it. You know, that's something you saw during these sanctions on Xinjiang. You had H&M boycotted. You had Chinese netizens and consumers saying, absolutely not. You boycott Xinjiang cotton, we're going to boycott H&M. I guess Chinese people have no agency, right? They just want to read climate deniers. I don't know. I mean, for a country that had a socialist revolution based on values like building toward communism, etc., it seems pretty reasonable that most people wouldn't want to read climate deniers. They're doing this because they want to dominate the investment, the employment, the technology, the leadership, and the opportunities that this entails for their economy. And they see all these industries as global growth sector. In China, climate policy is industrial policy. Ooh, that's bad. That's real bad. In the United States and the West, it's not. Climate policy is just absolutely nothing because there's very little of it. In this Inflation Reduction Act, while it was suckled on in the beginning of this, where this O'Malley was like, it's so great, bow down to our U.S. masters, didn't mention how a lot of that is due to a concession to Mr. Joe Manchin's drill baby drill industries, which are going to worsen the environment. I mean, absolutely ridiculous that it's talked about like this. But nonetheless, you still have an acknowledgement that China is serious about this. So anyway, this goes on to talk about, let's so it continues. So let's finish this up. Um, so a key message was a warning about basically last month Biden's energy secretary Jennifer Granholm attended a conference in Sydney with Australia's energy minister Chris Bowen and the International Energy Agency's director Faith Birol. The conference was held in the shadow of whatever. So, a key message in this conference was a warning about China's dominance, not only in deployment of renewable energy and its manufacture, but even the production of its base ingredients, such as polysilicon used to make photovoltaic solar cells, in the process of critical minerals and lithium. So, again, don't collaborate with China. No, 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 no. Don't collaborate with China around climate. You must worry. You must compete. You must. What ended up happening was sanctions, right? That's what's happened. Western leaders worry just as Europe allowed itself to be blackmailed by an energy giant and Putin, they might be setting themselves for the same problem with Xi in a decarbonized world. Far from fretting that China is stuck in the coal era, they fear it will dominate the renewable future. So instead of thinking about, well, maybe we should work with those guys over there in China. Maybe we should, I don't know, collaborate. Maybe we need to learn something. Maybe the tables have turned and now the technology transfer has to go the other direction. Maybe we can all do this. Maybe we can all profit from this. Maybe this is something that will actually help the stability of society. No, 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 no. We have to worry that China is going to outcompete us because how will our investors and our the private for profiteers and our capitalists and our oligarchs, how will they get the money that they deserve, right? How will they be able to turn this into a useless, profitable venture that will just worsen the situation? So, again, you see here, 80% of the world's solar cells were produced in China, and that by 2025, it's going to be 95%. One province, that's Xinjiang, is responsible for 40% of global production, and two factories for about 20%. So it's like, oh, that's a dangerous thing, right? Well, then do it. That's my opinion. They're saying it's dangerous. The West, Australia, the United States saying it's dangerous. Then you do it. Why are you sanctioning? They're sanctioning right now the United States through the Uyghur Forced Labor Prevention Act, sanctioning China's solar industry instead of working together. It's so counterproductive. So anyway, I don't have to go on with this, right? It talks about how China and the United States cut off climate talks because of what the United States did with regard to Pelosi's Taiwan visit. Okay. And I want to show you some other things, right? But I think this is an interesting quote, right? A senior global policy advisor at Greenpeace China, Li Shuo, says a crucial contribution China has made is not just the billions of tons of greenhouse gases its deployment of green tech has avoided, but its success in driving down the cost of technology globally. It might make absolute geopolitical sense for the rest of the world to develop its own supply chains, but the fear is that it is not clear that it can achieve its decarbonization goals without China. I think the jury is very much out on this, he said. In fact, we're only at the very beginning of this decoupling, so I don't think we know the answer to this question, but the stakes are high and only time will tell. I mean, that's the thing. This is the thing with everything. The United States passed this Chips and Science Act. It's the same thing. It's going to cost $1 trillion to try to produce chips, semiconductor chips. It's going to cost $1 trillion to try to resource, right? Meaning bring it back, bring that production back here. That's why it doesn't ever happen, is because these corporations don't want to pay that kind of money, right? And so China has been able to, through, they say it's because of the monopoly, it's because of the public investment. It's because China keeps the cost of production low through that public investment. It's called subsidies. So the United States is weaponizing subsidies now with the CHIPS Act in order to try to get Samsung and other semiconductor TMSC in Taiwan to try to get them to move production or to transfer technology so companies can produce them here. Not only is that going to take years and years and years to build up for the United States, it's going to cost $1 trillion, according to CSIS, that the State Department think tank, which is known to warmonger. Even they acknowledge that. So this is the same deal here. To sanction China's industry and increase the cost of solar resources and parts like solar polysilicon in the Uyghur Forced Labor Prevention Act is it's increasing inflation and is going to elevate the cost of all renewables, which the United States is not willing to produce in a manner anywhere close. You heard 60 gigawatts, incredibly impressive. China in 1 year is doing 3 times that much, 6 times that much, right? Like that that's because of the way that China uses its public subsidies not as a weapon, but to keep prices low so it can expand production. The United States, though, relies on corporations and corporations only. And when subsidies come in, it's to bolster those private corporations. It's not to bolster social needs, human needs, planning, etc., around things like the environment. So it's really important to see this within this context, right? The Chips and Science Act and climate change, how the US is looking at climate change, how Biden is. It's all about waging this new Cold War. It's not about, well, high tech could be good for humanity. Well, the world's ecology being protected, conserved, and then healed is good for humanity. It's good for the people. It's good for the planet. No, it's about how can we undermine China and try to achieve this impossible, reckless, and outright dangerous goal of trying to weaken and then overthrow China's government, political system, and economic system. That is at the heart of all of this. And even the Sydney Morning Herald has to acknowledge, Bloomberg has to acknowledge, China is doing this. China is going forward with attempting to play its part in fighting climate change. And so for those Western activists out there, those progressives and leftists and AOCs, the squad, everybody in that environmental activist camp, go to China. Take a delegation to China. I dare you. I was there for 16 days, 16, 17, something like that. 16 days. And I can tell you, I don't think I walked a block without seeing some form of renewable energy. I can't tell you the last time I walked around my area or any part of the United States where I could say the same thing. That's the difference. That is the difference. You could hop in a cab, it's electric. Hop on a bus, it's electric. Look at people's apartments, solar energy panels everywhere. Wind farms, solar farms. You drive out, take the train, take the high speed. You drive out on the roads, out into the rural, impasses between cities. You're going to see it. That's the difference. So I want to show you something with the last 15 minutes, because it's not just about, oftentimes China is looked at as a technocracy, right? China is this technocracy that, oh yeah, it's pouring all this money, but the people, who are the people? They're just pawns of the Communist Party of China. They don't know what they're doing. They're just being led around like sheep, right, to the slaughter. Well, on Twitter, with amid these fires a week ago, there was some really interesting stuff coming out on um really interesting stuff coming out on how people responded, right? Because you had thousands, hundreds of thousands, if not millions of people mobilizing in these cities like Chongqing, which was really affected by this, to help people out and to help the environment, right? To come to the aid of the environment. It was a really beautiful thing, not covered anywhere else. So I'm going to show you a couple of things, right? So here's a video of volunteers. Okay. Um, so here's a Twitter user saying that tears filled her eyes just looking at this. So I can't read it, but these are volunteers, and this is confirmed in the next video. So these are volunteers, that went out to address the fires, and you'll see what they did in a second. Okay, so let me just play this. So that's one video, and then I want to show you the context for that, because that shows that people were uh people were really thankful for who the volunteers to put out the fires to address this massive heat wave. And I want to show you Seems like in the chat, Chinese music is not for everyone. But I want to share what this Twitter user, Singapore Wu Mao, had to say. So he said, a picture is worth 1,000 words. While the fire is raging on one side, the other side, thousands of volunteers form a great wall of China lights to move water, fire extinguisher supplies to fight the fire. Chinese spirit will never die. So here's the picture here. So this is what people were doing. This is what people were thanking the volunteers for, is mobilizing this kind of response. Right here, you see the people mobilize. This is a wall to address the fire. I mean, that's putting your life at risk. And here's a video of it. Okay, so I'm gonna just. I get emotional because only a socialist society can do that. When the United States, the California fires, when those happen, what happens? Are people organized? Are we mobilized? Are we ready to fight these together? Are we ready to resolve problems like that? Can we be collectively mobilized so quickly? Absolutely not. Absolutely not. No. And, this is all around the Chongqing area where this was happening because they were experiencing some of the most horrific situations when it comes to these fires. And I want to just contrast this because as I said before, the United States is not mobilized to do this. It's not. And these fires are happening in California. There are present threats that this climate catastrophe presents to people. And of course, we know that Black people, poor people, oppressed people face this environmental racism, these horrid conditions. The United Nations documented this in places like Alabama, right? Just absolutely disgusting, uh, extreme poverty, right? That has an environmental component to it. I want to show you now how California mobilizes to fight the fires. And I'm not going to read this article in full, but I think you'll get the point. What does California owe its incarcerated firefighters? So I just want to, let you know that those videos we watched, first of all, it's quite obvious that those are civilians, right? That those are people on the ground being mobilized to fight a fire, ordinary people. The United States, the state of California, this progressive bastion, literally pays prisoners 50 cents, a dollar, some horrific slave wage amount to go and put out the fires. This is the work of people like Kamala Harris. This is what they supported. Those risking their life on the front lines of the state's wildfires earn a fraction of a minimum wage. Look at this. These are incarcerated. These are prisoners. It's in 2017. That's who's putting out the fires. A fraction of the minimum wage. The minimum wage is $7.25 federally. So anyway, we don't have to go through this. You get the point, right? You get the point. The point is that China is mobilizing people. You saw it. You see those videos. Those are incredible examples of people mobilized, right? Around the need to protect each other and to protect the planet. And so it's not just technology. It's not this technocracy. China just has money. There's a lot of people, a lot of liberals, a lot of whatever, hard rightists, all these folks. They think China is just full of money because they just take everybody's money, and everybody's money from the US to China, everyone's money is getting taken, and China is just pouring that in unfairly, yeah, blah, blah. And you never see that mobilization on the Western media. You'll never see it. Happened during COVID too. So people want to say, oh, you're for draconian COVID policies. I'm for those hundreds of thousands of people who risked their lives during the height of a pandemic you didn't even know about or wouldn't even look at because your media wouldn't even tell you about it, other than China's killing its people and China's imprisoning its people in homes. We're telling you about those 40,000 doctors going to Wuhan to serve the people, Communist Party members to serve the people, the hundreds of thousands of volunteers out on the streets delivering people's medications, their foods, meeting one-on-one. I know people in Wuhan who had the experience of volunteers coming to their home, checking up on them, talking about what they needed during a period where no one knew how severe it was going to be, whether it would be a pandemic or not. China was still doing it. So I'm with those folks. That's the people. That's the people doing what is necessary. We need to follow that example. We need to figure out, how do we do that here? Our nonprofits, our social services, our human service organizations, our public sector, which barely exists, it's not there. We have no public health system. I don't want to hear about all this and that. No, we have a private health system. Health, or as Margaret Flowers likes to say, we have a sick care system that cares only about profits. So there really is no comparison here, and these kind of mass mobilizations need to be shown, right? Because that is inspirational, and that's what we can kind of help others, by showing others that we can help foster more solidarity and also lessen, right? Because we can't just damper anti-Russia, anti-China, any kind of anti-communist, pro-imperialist propaganda. We can't just do it by saying, well, these are the facts. Now, people need to be able to feel something. They need to see people in motion. They need to see how it actually works. And I think here, when it comes to both China's investment in renewables and how China can mobilize, how people mobilize in China to resolve problems, I mean, that's quite inspiring. So, we got about 6 minutes, okay, until um the guests come on, okay? And um please do like the video, okay? Like the video, hit that subscription button, right? Hit that notifications bell. And as I said before, I am just, oh, well, thanks to the new subscriber. So I'm just one subscriber away, $5 per month or more if you are so generous on Patreon, from meeting my goal for the month, which helps me brave the storm and helps give me the ability. I got a lot of updates coming up this month, that I need to do in order to improve this channel, as well as fix some things. Actually, my interface that I'm using, one of the channels is not very good, so I'm struggling. So support this work, everyone, as we're waiting for Camp Dada to come on. So yeah, I mean, that's what I wanted to cover when it comes to China. I mean, I guess I'll get to announcements. I might not have a lot of time for that when we're speaking with Camp Dad. I want to give Sabby and the Bang sisters a good portion of time. I want to announce one tomorrow. I'm not bringing my equipment. I'm going away. My wife and I are going to spend some time outside of the city, and I'm not going to bring my equipment, which means likely no streams. I have to bring some things for work. So there's a possibility, depending on how things go, I could jump on maybe for a special little thing, but it won't be like this, right? I'm not going to have the camera with me. It's too much for just like a week trip. It's too much to travel with, the lighting, all that equipment, not happening. So, but I will have some stuff because I am unfortunately working a little bit on my part-time job during this time. So I will have something. Maybe I'll podcast. I got an article on the way. So it's not like nothing will be happening, but this streaming won't be happening. Okay. And thank you to Socialisti. I love that name. Plugging. Okay. So we only got a few minutes. All right. Only got a few minutes. So yeah. All right. So let me address this because, Kevin's here. He was on the stream with RBN. I was not attacking anybody. I was asked questions. I was asked to come on and talk about a particular subject. I was presented material. I was talking about the ideas that were being presented. Actually, I'm always very careful not to attack people and individuals because that's what this environment often fosters. And I don't find it very helpful. But if you have certain ideas, I think it's okay for them to be challenged. If I were so frustrated about people attacking my ideas, or I don't want to say attack, people criticizing the ideas that I espouse, I would have left politics, the media, the activist scene. I would have left it a long time ago because that's literally what we get. If you're a socialist, if you're a communist, if you're someone who goes against the grain from the establishment from the left, you are going to be attacked. And, we know some forces on the right get this too, but they don't have the history of this. They don't have, there is not, there is no comparison, right? So if that were the case, then I would have been gone, and this includes among the left. Among folks on the left, that's probably where I get most of my criticism at this point. So I think we need to just be a little more, how should I say, mature about disagreements and criticisms and conversations, because this is politics, baby. This has real world effects. People are affected, not just by how we think, but what we say, but really more so what we do and how we apply these ideas. This really matters. So this is a perfect transition, actually, because I have my guests on who are walking the walk. Okay. And, they're both affiliated with Revolutionary Blackout Network. They both do their own work as well. So I'm pleased to be joined by Sabrina Salbati, aka Sabby Sabs, and the Bank Sisters. Hello, greetings. Good evening.
Hi, Danny.
Hey. Well, I'm very glad to have you all on. I don't know where you all are in terms of, I forget where you are, Sabby, and I don't know where you both are. But thanks for joining me at this hour. And yeah, I definitely just want, whoever wants to go first, please talk about Camp Dada, what it is, and what you're planning to do, the ideas behind it, all of that. All that good stuff. Whoever wants to start.
Cool. Okay. Hey, nice to meet you, Danny. Hey, hello. Yeah. We're in Virginia. So it's 10, I guess, where we are. I don't know. I'll probably fall asleep soon. So Camp Dada, it is it's just kind of the brainchild of, I think, a women's panel. We were having like a brainstorming session about healthcare. And we wanted to do another healthcare rally. And then one of the other girls, Lucy, who's organizing with us, she was like, we do a lot of rallies in DC. Sometimes the people aren't even there. And then we just bother the people who are going to work. So why don't we take this to where the rich people live? And so from there, we were like, okay, well, we're going to just get out there. And then we were like, okay, hold on. We don't have that much money and we don't want to give our money to the cops. So maybe let's focus on building community and taking those first steps of actually just meeting people offline, which I just think is a huge thing that the left hasn't really done so much. Like, we're really good at theorizing and discussing things, but when it comes to putting it in practice, we've got to start doing that. And I think the biggest first step is meeting people. So that's one big goal of the camp and kind of how it started. I got nothing to add right now.
Hi, Danny.
Hey.
Danny, I'm right outside of Boston.
Oh yeah. Blank moment. Yeah, no, because I'm a Bostonian, so I should have remembered that. But maybe I forgot for a reason. Anyway, continue.
Yeah, I think one of the things I'm excited about for Camp Dada is we're actually going to do skill sharing, which I know I got the schedule today, so I'm really excited about that. So we'll be teaching each other skills. So I think that's really important. And this will be my first time actually meeting a lot of the activists that I've kind of met like on Twitter or on panels. This will be my first time really meeting a lot of them in person, with the exception of a couple few. So I'm really excited. Like, this is really what we need to be doing. We need to have these face-to-face like meetings and discussions. And I know we're also going to have a couple of protests that are planned as well. So yeah, I'm really pumped for it. I think that Chris had just kind of said it best. I know Keisha and Courtney, we talked about this not too long ago, that I asked him for advice in reference to organizing and actually getting people to show up. And Chris had just said, you need to be meeting each other in person and not so much online. So.
Yeah, no, I mean, that to me, I mean, that's one of the reasons I really wanted to have you all on to talk about this, is because I mean, most of my work now lives online, but that's not where I came from. And so for me, it's always strange, right? In doing independent media or leftist media, whatever, socialist media, and whatever we want to call it, and not having that institution building happening, right? I've been in unions, been in anti-war activism, been in various, Occupy, all that stuff. And it requires any kind of work with communities, any kind of work to build against oppression. It really requires the development of real relationships. But really, I've learned over these years, and I'm sure you know it too, and you said it, we don't do a good job at that. And sometimes it's because we're just not the most maybe as individuals we have some things that we need to deal with, but at the same time it's so important. So who's going and talk about the protest too. I'd love to hear about what you all are planning to do.
Yeah. Okay. So we're not doing a protest exactly. We're doing like artistic actions, because that's where the Dadaism comes in, which is kind of like art and political protest from back in the day. And so we're like reinventing that in our own ways. So we're gonna have kind of symbolic actions like on the public beaches there. Like one, for example, might be that like making sandcastles, but in the shape of coffins, and then putting facts about Medicare for all or something on them and leaving them on the beach, like before all the rich people get there early in the morning. That's maybe something we're going to do. I don't want to give it all away, but we want to do things where we're leaving an impression, but we're not putting ourselves in any danger, because we have some immigrants coming. We've got LGBTQ people coming. We've got people of color coming, of course, women. And when you're meeting people in a new space, you want to feel like you're safe. So that's super important. And then we've also got what else? We've got anarchists, we've got socialist alternative, we've got Green Party people, we've got people who don't believe in left or right. We've
Occupy Wall Street.
People who tried electoralism. So all kinds of people, honestly.
Yeah, it's pretty interesting. The group that we've put together, that has coalesced, I guess we'll say, it's pretty interesting because, some people were just people that we met like strictly just on Twitter. Some people we might have met at a protest somewhere. It's been just like a really interesting group. Some people just like, saw us on a live stream or something like this and decided to reach out and ask more questions. So it's been really interesting getting to know people, even just over like the short vetting process, to see whether or not they could make it to the camp and see what their inspirations were for coming as well. So I'm excited to get to hang out with people.
Yeah, some people I met at the March for Medicare for All last year. So that actually really brought a lot of people together, because we had it in like over 50 different cities. So yeah.
Totally.
Yeah, and I remember listening to you, Sabby, talk to Rokana about that. I was like, what's that? But it seems like it's some pretty good stuff. It always helps to be on the ground and to build those real connections. And it's going to be very interesting, right? Anarchists, socialists, all those groups that you mentioned don't talk to each other very much. So I'm really interested in maybe a post conversation about how that all went, because I think it's so important, because there are fundamental principles that we do share, and then there are ones that we don't share, right? And I think it's really important to be able to hash that out, because then you can find actual points of unity moving forward, and as well as understand more. And I think what is reconcilable differences and what aren't, because that often becomes a big challenge, I think, for us on the left, is figuring that out and figure out how to navigate that. But I wanted to, I can definitely pull up the stuff on how to support at the, towards the end, so everyone stick around. But what do you say to those? Because you mentioned protecting people, right? You mentioned protecting vulnerable people, people who could be subject to a disproportionate amount of violence, repression. What do you say to people that call that like wokeism, right? Because I feel like there is this new trend, and I don't know if you all are going to address this in the camp, but there's this trend. I think it's a reaction to Donald Trump and the duopoly kind of falling apart. And, there's all this like a political vacuum, and people are trying to figure out how to think about independently from this two-party system. And there seems to be, on the one hand, right, and a real, I think, positive acknowledgement that the Democratic Party co-ops movements and really pours a lot to crush through the establishment in a very, I think, nuanced way, in a way that's hard to sometimes even fight back against, right? While at the same time, there's like this jump to, well, LGBTQ rights, that's just a neoliberal psyop. Like, why are we talking about that? The working class is united. What do you say to people on that side? Because I think, I'm curious about your takes on this.
Me? Oh, okay. I think that, it's very interesting. I think like during like Bernie Sanders campaigns, I realized that we're really not as divided as we think when it comes to the issues. If you just stick to the issues and not left versus right. So when I talk to conservatives about healthcare, like for everyone, most conservatives agree that everyone should have healthcare. When I talked about the minimum wage, most of them agreed that, yeah, the minimum wage is really low. We should increase it. The problem comes in when you connect it to a campaign. And I think this was the problem that I saw with the Occupy movement kind of going into the Bernie Sanders campaign. Like, that's really where he got that 99% from. I don't know if everyone remembers. But then it was like all of a sudden it was like it became a part of a campaign and a part of the Democratic Party because Bernie was running through the Democratic Party. You see the term progressive has now been co-opted by the Democratic Party. Now everyone's a progressive, including apparently Shontel Brown and Hillary Clinton. So this is why I think it's important that you don't let the Democratic Party, the Republican Party, you don't let them come in and co-op movements. I think anything going on the ground needs to remain strictly on the ground, and don't connect it to a campaign. Don't connect it to politics, because then the meaning gets lost and it gets watered down. We saw that with the George Floyd protests, right? Look at what happened when Nancy Pelosi and Jim Clyburn got involved. They got a hold of it. They started kneeling in kente cloth, and it just lost the meaning. So I think that it's important that people who are, those of us that are activists, we're not saying that you can't participate in electoral politics, but the movements that you're creating on the ground needs to stay within the activism community and don't connect it to a political campaign. I think that's when you lose the message. I think the term of woke is interesting. We've talked about this on RBN. I remember first hearing the term woke in the Black community. And again, that term has been co-opted, and now it's just anytime you even mention race or gender or anything, people will come in and they'll say, oh, that's woke, that's identity politics. And that's actually not the definition of woke. That's not the definition of identity politics, but it's been co-opted. And so now it's like you can't even talk about those issues anymore without people saying that. So I think we need to get back to the original meaning of those terms and take those terms back.
Well, I would say from this experience, I'm dead on with you with like the Bernie stuff and all of that, and definitely with what woke used to mean. And I think like we definitely would not be accused of being woke. I think we would maybe be accused of being anti-woke. I'm not sure. Because we've been planning this since April. And so one of the things that we want to do after this is definitely like a debrief of things to look out for when you're organizing and all of that. But we did have some of these culturally I don't find them to be connected to the issue of like, if we're talking about Medicare for all, that means for everyone, right? Where some other issues have made divisiveness within the group to the point where people are like, no, this issue is so important to me, I'm not going to come anymore. Like,
Right.
I like it's so I would say I hear that wokeness, and when I say like we want to protect people, it means this to me. I'm a Black woman. Nobody ever looks out for me. Nobody's like, oh, you know what? Let's make sure that there's an extra solar light in your tent so that you feel safe because you're around a bunch of people you don't know. It doesn't mean I want to hold your hand or I'm gonna change everything so that everything is accustomed to you. But it does mean I'm gonna look out for you because I do know like you might have a little bit of a safety, you know, you might be like,
Concern.
okay, concern, right? But I think yeah, we definitely have had some issues with wokeness in organizing, and I would say they've come from the younger people. Actually, some of the older people too.
Some
honestly.
of the older people.
Honestly, some of the like we've had some people who are like want to go to like every lecture or be in every group.
But when it comes down to the practicality of actually, like, we come from a very, you know, working class kind of upbringing, and you cannot choose who you work with. And I think we have to start thinking about activism in the same way. I mean, you can't, if we want Medicare for all, then you have to work with all of the people. You can't just choose, you know, who you want to protect at certain times. You have to protect everyone. And I think there's really this, it's just like, I mean, it's interesting that you say it's like an op or whatever, but it's like, I mean, it does just make it so easy to just pull people apart and make people start fighting. And there's fights over here and fights over there. And then all of a sudden, you know, the right has organized themselves to the point where they got Roe versus Wade overturned because we weren't paying attention, I guess. Like, it's really screwing us up.
Too many purity tests is what I think.
Yeah,
Just too many purity tests on the left. Not everybody is going to meet your exact, you know, standards of what you believe. But if you can focus on these big three things, which is why we focused on like climate crisis, how can we actually help each other with that? Medicare for all, pushing for that. And then general strike, what does that look like? How do we actually organize for something like that? You know, these are things that we can actually focus on and have discussions about. And then we're also going to do things like letter writing for prisoners. So we want to do some political prisoners we're going to write for them to get out, or also for the standards at certain prisons to improve. Michigan, they don't get time off for good time. So normally good behavior. Yeah, it's called a good time bill. But you know, normally you would get time off for having not gotten to a fight the 10 years or whatever that you were in prison. But in Michigan, they're not upholding that. So, you know, even though we don't live in Michigan, it's something that's important. And the idea of partnering with PAPS is like, you know, they write pen pals to individual people. And although, you know, we might not have the time to do it at the camp, we would like to, you know, elevate them and like get the word out a little bit more about them and share as much about them as we can. And I feel like, especially on the left, there's not a lot of money. So all we can do to like retweet each other, share each other, you know, be nice to each other, it would go so much further than all this divisive stuff that we're doing.
Anything to add, Sabby?
Yeah, I mean, I would just say, like, I've seen people removed from groups because they may disagree on one issue. So it's going to be difficult to find someone that agrees with you on every single issue. And I think that might be part of the reason why we're not getting anywhere. I think on the left, like Courtney and Keisha were saying with the purity test, it's just, you're going to have to learn how to work with people that you disagree with. I mean, I lived in a red state before I lived in Massachusetts, and most of the people that I went to school with and I worked with were conservative. So that's the thing. Like, I can't say I'm not going to talk to people on the right. Like, I don't understand that logic. If you're trying to create some type of movement in this country, newsflash, the left is actually really small in this country. So you're going to have to talk to people you may not agree with.
Yeah, I feel like one of the big problems that I think the neoliberal kind of, we could call it maybe those who stump for things like identity politics, for example, those who create these wedges, right? Where it's like, okay, yeah, LGBTQ plus, you know, politics issues, as you were saying, Sabby. I mean, there are many issues, legitimate. We need to understand. we need to be, we need to be in support and in solidarity, right, with the violence that trans people experience, with the incredible amounts of discrimination, housing, employment, etc., that trans people, queer people experience. Those are real concrete issues that anyone can get behind. But then there is this idea, right, that everybody is going to understand issues of identity the same. And there's generational gaps with that. There's educational gaps in terms of how people are taught how to talk about things like gender. And you're just not going to get a full like agreement, as you said, like these periods. It's not going to happen, right? And certainly, I think one of the things that has been lost, especially since the Obama era, has been the art of persuading people to a position rather than saying, okay, you don't do this and that, or you don't believe in this and that, then that means, you're not in our camp. And I think, especially since Obama was elected, that became a very intense way that people have been divided. And I think a lot of that is because, there has been this emphasis on a particular kind of politics rather than a politics of unity, a kind of a politics of, well, anything that works for the establishment, right? And so for liberals, I mean, for me, I grew up in a liberal city. I mean, I grew up in Cambridge, and I can tell you that I find the disagreements that I have with liberals in Cambridge to be just as infuriating as those that I have with people on the right. It's just as infuriating. It's just different, right? And it becomes like, okay, well, then is every working class person who's a liberal someone that I can't talk to, or is everyone who maybe sits on the right someone I can't talk to? No, we have to learn how to persuade, and of course that will then lead to, well, are they going to be down with what we unite on, or are they not going to be? Yeah, that's the point I feel like is not often talked about, right? Having that conversation.
I would say one thing too is that I feel like because we make these distinctive camps of this is a good person, this is a bad person, we don't have any nuance and we can't actually see what's really happening. Like I feel like I will experience much more racism in a liberal area, just much more low key. And it's almost much more difficult to explain. And it's more difficult to explain to the people who are doing it because they think
they're doing
that they know what's up.
Right. Exactly.
So I feel like it's, we got to break down almost all of these things. You've got to be able to be around people who, and that's what we're saying with safety. Like, yeah, we want to vet people to make sure nobody is hateful. Of course not. But, if there is a difference of opinion on certain things, that's something we can talk about. And especially when you're in person, it's just so much different than when you're online, texting each other, DMing each other.
Anybody can argue over Twitter. Anybody is like big and bad and bold Twitter, hateful, terrible things, but they're not going to say it to your face 9 times out of 10.
No, that's true. I was going to add about the liberal component because I lived in Cambridge too, like Danny, and there is a lot of elitism there as well because you have MIT, you have Harvard, so you have that component, and then you also have what Courtney was referring to, which is a lot of covert racism. And she's right. It is difficult to explain it to people, but I think it's important that we break down these microaggressions. There's certain things that you can say to people that you may not think is pretty offensive, but it is. And it's little things like, oh, you're so articulate. You're so well dressed. Like those kind of phrases, having heard those phrases like myself, it is very offensive, and those are microaggressions. And I think that a lot of times covert racism gets overlooked, whereas people are taught and trained to focus more so on overt racism. But covert racism, in my experience, has been even worse because a lot of times, or sometimes, you don't know how to take it. It could be that that person is being racist, or it could just be that they're just being rude. And so there's always that fine line. And so you do just have to educate people. But I think what's important is that we continue to talk about these issues, but you're not going to educate people if you just write them off and you don't talk to them. I think that's important to know.
Yeah, definitely. So yeah, well, this effort, this organizing effort that you all are doing seems to be kind of an experiment on, well, how do we move the left forward? Those who are actually the left, not like, not people in the establishment who call themselves the left, but those who say they're on the left, or maybe say they're like anti-establishment and are open to working with those on the left. How during this camping trip, you kind of went over a broad overview of the agenda. How do you hope to facilitate that kind of unity, or at least how do you hope that this, what do you hope you will get out of this, and how this will move things forward?
Oh yeah, no, great question. I think one of the things that's really going to help bring us together, it's simple things. It's like going to be helping each other get to the actual campsite and picking each other up. It's going to be, setting the dinner table every night, or doing the trash together, or doing the dishes together, helping each other with tents. It's going to be those small things that you don't think really mean anything, but that's like, those are the times like when you're showing up, when we're helping pack something, all of that. I think, and also the skill shares, I think that will really shine.
Yeah, the skill shares for sure. I think on a broader scale, I'm really hoping that, I feel like general strike is something that everyone can kind of get behind. We're definitely doing some work on climate crisis, but that, like, honestly, what we're doing, it's already a crisis. So really what we're doing is more skill shares to, learn how to garden or forage for yourself, or make your own kind of ointments and stuff like that. Because the climate crisis is maybe already too far gone. But
one other thing I was thinking about with the climate crisis is, like, we're also meeting people from all over the country. And I'm sorry, but as things deteriorate, you're going to want to know a couple of people in different parts of the country.
If you live in Mississippi, I guess, which is about to get flooded, then, you might need to know somebody somewhere else where you can stay. So I think just like, if we can connect on, pretty much everybody has to work, or everyone has to have a job, or, money unfortunately rules our world. So I think that's something that would really empower people if we could, even get people to go on strike for 3 days or something. I'm feeling invigorated because our labor union just won the union at Chateau Marmont. So I'm like, okay, that was literally a 2-year fight. 2 years. So maybe a little bit more than 2 years. But I think, money is something that everyone can kind of get behind and like understands, and you can't argue about identity politics when you're talking about money, really.
Economics.
Elitism, of course, but not, identity stuff.
That's true. We'll also have like survival skills as well. And this is something too that, like, I don't know, it's kind of come to my attention as of recent, how many people know how to build a fire? How many people know how to find their way if they're lost in the woods? How many people know how to make a compass, right? To find your way back? How many people know how to build shelter? How many people know how to do these things? And it may get to a point where you may need to know. I'm on the coast. I think me and you, Danny, we're on the coast. It may get to a point where we may need to move further inland. Who knows, right?
Yeah. I'm a working class city kid. I don't know how to do any of those things. So, maybe I need to jump on this trip.
We've got room for you. You can come along. Sabby's husband is a survivalist, or what he's going to teach us some survival skills. So, yeah.
Well, it's Black August. It reminds me of the Black Panther Party's survival pending revolution, right? This idea that there are things that we need to do for people, with people, in order to live within the system, because that's something that I think is taken for granted, right? Working class people are not just vessels for ideas, right? That's just not, right? The establishment, the elite, they have control of those institutions, but for the most part, of course, we have our independent channels like ours, but in terms of the dominance, right? They dominate. But at the same time, right? Working class people, oppressed people, they live by their needs, by their material needs. So that can't be ignored in anything that we do, even in our media work. That can't be ignored, because if we ignore that, then we're, I think, glossing over or ignoring a key problem, that we faced as analysts, journalists, whatever we want to call ourselves in terms of reaching people. And then we also run the risk of not contributing to on the ground efforts like this that are trying to bridge that what is enormous gap right now, just to be real. I mean, it is, right? People are suffering. Austerity, one of the big things about austerity is that it pushes our expectations lower and lower and lower. So you talk about unions. I mean, I've been in many unions, and a lot of the work is like trying to elevate people's expectations, like to expect that you can fight and that you can win. Because a lot of people are like, you can't fight, you can't win. It is what it is, But anyway, I'll let you guys react to that.
I think the unions, oh God, I've talked to several people who have been trying to unionize recently. One of who recently was just fired for trying to unionize at their Starbucks location. So I think it's important for people to understand that this isn't something that's done overnight. If you're just trying to start one, I've never been a part of a union actually, but there were times that I wish that I was. And I think that this is the time for workers to really like push for what they want. So I think for people who are listening, if you're thinking about trying to unionize, don't just ask for the bare minimum. Now's the time for you to really go all the way in. Ask for more than what you actually want, just in case they start to take things away, but never just ask for the bare minimum. And so I think that's where some of these successful wins have been coming from. We had nurses go on strike here in Massachusetts. They were on strike for over 10 months and held out to get what they needed to get. And that's where mutual aid comes in. So they did have like a community that was able to do mutual aid so that they could pay their bills and so that they could still eat while they weren't working. So I think like what I really hope to like come from this is for us to like build community, not just online, but also offline. And I think that's what we're going to need in the end to get through whatever else is coming our way.
Mm-hmm.
You gotta hit the mute. Gosh, yeah, good point, Sabby. I mean, good point, both of you guys. I loved, like, Danny, I love what you were saying about, like, we have to learn how to persuade people more. I mean, that, also to me goes back to the union stuff too, because God, that was a lot of persuading and trying to convince people. And really, when you've been mistreated for so long, it's hard to believe that you could potentially get anything else. But I mean, a lot of what helped, I think, was just like straight information sharing. Like, you don't always, people just have to be a little bit more open with each other. If we're going to be able to, your life is not always going to be Instagram beautiful. Like, you might get fired from your job for trying to organize. People need to know that. You might be struggling because you got fired. So people need to know that. People need to see kind of the realities of what's going to happen so that we can effectively help each other and assist each other. And, if we can, I mean, hopefully part of what we're going to do at the camp, is hopefully kind of try to strategize, what's next and, what can be done and, hopefully people will like mesh together, and like make their own little groups, depending on where they live or what they're interested in. I think there's an insane amount of work to be done, but I think I like this, elevate people's ideas, because then, once people see, I think a lot of people are, starting to see that obviously we're run by an oligarchy and, there's not a lot we can do, but if we withhold our labor for sure, then there's not anything they can do. They don't know how to work. They don't know how to do any of the things we know how to do. They can't run a restaurant without you. So what are they going to do? They're not going to, they want to go out to eat for sure. So we have to just like really within ourselves bolster the feeling of like, we can do this and we deserve it. It's more about feeling of deserving it too.
Yeah. And it's a great way to negotiate too. You got to start up here if we're going to be negotiating with these monsters. Yeah. I want it all at first.
Exactly. Okay. $35 an hour. Come on.
Right. Yeah. Right. Yeah. Well, when you mentioned funds, right? Like with the in Sabby, you're talking about the I think it was with the MNA, right? The Massachusetts Nurses Association. They that's always a thing with unions. But I think when we talk about general strike, and you also said that you haven't been a part of a union, you joined like 90+% of labor at this point in the United States. And so this idea of, okay, we're going to withhold our labor means that people have to be able to survive. And so a general strike, which includes will include, if it happens, if it is organized, will include millions upon millions of unorganized workers, which means that the employers will have every ability with no redress to say, okay, bye, right? And without a fund to help them survive, how can they be mobilized to what's going to happen, which is a general strike will also provoke maybe the largest scab movement that we've ever seen because of the desperate situation that exists in the United States. And so that you will have to have workers also ready to inspired and also fulfilled in terms of their needs to defend against that, because that's one of the classic things that employers will do. They will bring in others, especially if you're an organizer, to say, okay, well, if you don't want to work, they will. So yeah, I mean, what do you all think about, I mean, that, because that's a big part of, I think, thinking of through a general strike. I don't know if you have any thoughts about that. It's something I always think about because, as you said, money is a key. It's key for, I mean, it is key for survival. It's not just, and it's really what the money will get people.
It is, but then it always just makes me think of like back in the day, like think about, like the Green Book and like, how were people able to organize without the internet, without all of we have more ways to connect now. And honestly, it's more difficult now than ever. So I think it's like, that's what I think about. How did they do that? So there's definitely a path forward if they were able to do it.
Yeah, I think like what you were saying too about how, I mean, honestly, the vast majority of people don't even work in the kind of profession that offers a labor union.
Yeah.
So, maybe it's something like you join the debtors union. If you have student debt, carceral debt, medical debt, they're a different kind of union, but at least that's a group of people with similar interests, and you guys, have something to work towards. I think another thing too is like, honestly, gosh, I don't know how you get people organized to do this, but if we could just get it in people's mind. I mean, Court is very good at, like, she's a good prepper. So it's like, if you just store away 1 can of beans every week until 2022 or whenever.
That's because I have anxiety.
Like,
that's why.
But there are ways to, because not
club.
everybody's going to be able to, get eggs from next door or tomatoes or what have you from their neighbor. If you start planning, then I think if you start planning and also have. You can do anything you put your mind to if you know how long it's going to be. If you know, okay, look, I'm going to be hungry for 3 days. Like, I can figure this out. Plan. If we can start teaching people to plan towards that, like on the right, they're full of preppers.
But it should be planned. Like, I think we can get to a point where it's planned and we have systems, because we also will have to take care of disabled comrades who, if
and
we're going to be showing.
I was about to say.
We have to think about that. We have to think about the elderly. So we have to, like, literally detach ourselves from these things and make our own systems. And like you were saying, protection, whatever it's going to take, so there are a lot of levels.
I would say like that kind of thing are, if we can convince the scabs to come and work in an elderly home or, work with a disabled person instead of crossing a picket line, that would be like a huge win. Like, we could still pay them in cash or whatever if you have it. But even if you don't, then just, if you feel compelled to work, then that's something that can be done.
I think the fastest general strike that you can have is if you shut down the ports. You would have to get the truckers, you would have to get transportation, all of those people involved. Like, that's really going to be, I think, the bulk of it, because even if, let's say, all the Amazon workers just decide to walk out, okay, that's fine. Jeff Bezos is a billionaire. He'll be fine. If you have all the Starbucks workers walk out, that's fine. Howard Schultz is going to be fine. Like, so I think the way to really do this quickly is you would have to get the people who are in charge of transportation and shipping, the ones who actually transport goods and services. You have to shut down the ports. And I think that would be the fastest way to do it. But that being said, like, to Courtney and Keisha's point, you do have to also think about people who have, medical issues. So if someone's diabetic, they need to have enough insulin to last through that. Same thing if you have someone that they have to get treatments or whatever every month. How are you going to handle that? Right. So this is where it would be good to have some type of community with people who are home health nurses. Like, my aunt's a home health nurse, people that can actually come into people's homes and help take care of them, because it could get to the point where, and I'm seeing some of this now, we already have a teacher shortage. Teachers are quitting. You have nurses that are quitting.
Yeah.
So, I mean, home health could be a little bit more attractive to people who are choosing to leave these hospitals and these clinics. And they may think, look, maybe it's just better for me just to do home health care instead. So you would have to have medical professionals, a medical professional team, and you would have to have people with that do transportation and shipping. You'd have to have them on board. I think that would be the quickest way to do it.
Yeah. Again, it's Black August. It reminds me in George Jackson's Blood on My Eye, he talks about actually how do you the way to disrupt, because the U.S.'s economy, even at that time, this was 1970, 71, right before he was killed. Even at that time, right, the capitalist economy in the U.S. had changed massively, and this is something we're dealing with, right? Changed massively, and the industry was already being gutted in the United States, and a lot of the economy was becoming service oriented. And then, of course, with services and with an outsourced production, you have a lot more of a kind of a distribution laden economy. So you have a lot of services, a lot of finance, a lot of money being thrown around, but then the goods and the services, that's all being distributed in all sorts of different ways, as you said, Sabby, from the ports. And then we could talk about the roads, right? That would be, if that could be organized. You have a lot of like the pearl clutchers, like, oh, wow, how could you, when Black Lives Matter was blocking, you're like stopping the people from going to their jobs, right? But there was not a lot of analysis of like, okay, well, what if that were applied to like literally targeted, not just at a road to say, we're protesting against police murder, racist police murders, totally, I think, justified. But what if that were also applied to, the fact that Amazon is super exploiting the workers on the planet? You want to shut down you could do it pretty easily by shutting down their distribution networks, and that could facilitate something like a general strike. And then everything else you said, very interesting, because I think about, like, you were talking about the disabled, even just when we talk about like whatever, culture wars, social, these kind of things, we can have organizing on these bases that also coincide with with what I think is a class struggle, right? So you can have, we should, I mean, you guys are going to write letters to prisoners. There needs to be prison contact organizing. There needs to be that needs to happen. There needs to be disabled people, unemployed. And during the Great Depression, there were unemployed councils. Right? In the 1970s and 80s, there were, welfare rights organizations and unions that were supporting people outside of the so-called former labor market, trying to organize people to fight for, just the subsistence that people need. So, maybe they could get a job. Maybe they, or maybe they, they just deserve to live, right? So there is a lot of, I think, also thinking through, and I think about all the time, is like, how do we navigate this situation that we're in now in the United States? Now, I'm always talking about foreign policy, but in the United States, we are under it's a peculiar situation, and one that has a lot to think through.
We're just over here saying how screwed we are.
Yeah, I mean, I think we're so fucked.
Yeah. JB brought up a good point. He said if you shut down fossil fuels, that will stall a lot of things, because people won't have energy, which that is important too. Well, at least an industry won't have energy. Gosh, I guess another thing we have to come to as well is like, what are the demands going to be? Mm-hmm. And I think that's going to be brutal to get to. Like, it shouldn't be that, but it shouldn't be that difficult. It should be, healthcare for sure.
Right.
And
that's like some of the issues just on the left, or whatever you call the left, is just so much energy in so many different places, and right. I feel like with the right, they're like, listen, we're going after abortion and we got to make sure they keep guns and all of this stuff. But like they have like a goal, like just few goals. And I just think we've got to get connected in those ways.
Yeah.
And they also too, I noticed this too, like on the right, they also organize a lot.
Mhm.
Like they're involved in the community. Like they come to like the church, like group meetings, like they have like these picnics and these group events. Like they're, when it comes to organizing, they're on point. And I think that we're not quite there yet on the left. And I don't, I'm trying to figure out why. I know some of it is because of like trying to organize online, but when the right like calls for something, like we're going to go to the Capitol and we're going to protest this, they have buses, they have thousands of people that will come out. There's just like no questions asked. But like when you try to do something like that on the left, it's just people are like, I'm sorry, what are we gonna do again?
I mean,
There's so many disagreements.
Right.
We've heard really bad excuses. Like one
Oh
of the
my gosh.
excuses that we heard recently was, I don't know everybody who's going to be there, so I don't feel safe personally.
Like
Now, the point of the camp is to meet new people that you don't know. That's literally the point.
the whole point.
But then I think that I don't know what that hesitation is to get offline with the left. And then there's another level to it where there's another side of it where I feel like it's elitism, where I feel like on the right, their independent media and their podcasters and their mainstream media, they will go to the conventions. They all go to these little things and show up because they all have a connected goal. And for some reason, it feels like you can't even get like a top tier independent media person to have on a newer independent media person. And then, of course, we're fighting against the mainstream media. So we're all over the place. And it's just, it's really baffling because you need, unfortunately, in America, there's also this kind of level of celebrity that you need to it too, because we're so propagandized and dumbed down that if this person's not going, then I don't know if I can actually attend this. So we've got to have all hands on deck when it's something that's important. Okay, there's a protest for healthcare. Everybody needs to go, or everybody needs to retweet it. It just looks like we don't even trust each other. Like we're going through each other's events like, oh, I don't know. I heard this speaker didn't believe in the vaccine, so I guess we can't go to that. It's just like there's no discussion, there's no nuance, and there's no focus, and it's really bothering me. And we've got to get the elitism out of it and the ego out of it.
Yeah, I mean, I think we could get past money is another huge issue, but I think that if we could organize well, we could need less money. So maybe we can't afford to send a bus of people somewhere, but maybe we can get a carpooling thing together. I mean, I just feel like
some of these podcasters make a lot of money. How come they're not sending us on some buses? Sorry.
I mean, it's true. I think about that a lot. There's a lot of when I see 50, 100,000 a month, I'm like, I get it. Look, taxes, I get it. When you're a content creator,
but
taxes come first. But when you make $100,000 per month,
right? Because you could start a foundation or something and dodge taxes.
Well, when you're making that money, you can certainly do that. You can do all sorts of. I mean, I'm not business savvy, so I make I make one.
I think it's a lot of like personalities involved, and I don't see this. And I made this joke the other day, but I think it's pretty true. Like, I don't see like Candace Owens and Ben Shapiro fighting each other on Twitter. I don't see it. Right. Even if it happens behind the scenes, maybe, I don't know, but I don't see them doing this. But I see the left doing this often, and it's just personality versus personality. You are guilty by association, depending on who you're friends with, even if you don't agree with them on everything. I've experienced that. I know the rest of us at RBN have experienced that. It's very weird. It's a lot of ego. And I think I look back to 2020 and I wonder, is it because all of us did not rally behind one particular candidate? You see, I think that's the difference. On the right, everybody kind of like, when it came down to it, they were like, okay, Trump looks like he's going to be the nominee.
Yeah,
for
GOP,
the
there's nothing else. There's nothing else. Yeah.
Everybody got behind Trump, right? But on the left, all of us weren't behind Bernie Sanders, to be honest. Like, some people were behind Bernie, some were behind Tulsi, some were behind Elizabeth Warren, got in there somehow. So it was just that was also part of the problem. And then, of course, like when Bernie Sanders suspended his campaign, not everyone rallied behind Joe Biden with good reason. But I think that's a big part of it too. So there's all this split over like political views. Mandates was a part of that too. Then mandates came in, so there are people that had disagreements over that. People have ended friendships over this. Like it's really bad, and to me, it's just like I don't understand what the goal is anymore. I feel like we've lost the plot. What is the goal? There is no Bernie Sanders leading a movement anymore, whatever you want to call it, whatever it was. Yeah. That's not happening anymore. So what is the end goal? And I feel like that piece is missing. Nobody's explaining that anymore. Like what's the goal here?
Well, I mean, at Black Agenda Report, we've always talked about the Democratic Party being the more effective evil, right? Because the way that politics in the United States work, and of course we're talking a lot about, and I think, Sabby, what you get to is the duopoly is so influential. It's so influential, and it's even in large part more influential on whatever calls themselves the left, because the right, you also mentioned money, right? The right has money, and they're willing to use that money around a united. We at Black Agenda, we call them the white man's party. They're willing to throw down and go anywhere they can to spread that message. Now there's like open sea. There's this big vacuum. So now they're like, okay, we're going to go everywhere. We're going to try to appeal to everyone. I mean, look at the way Tucker Carlson operates at this point. Like, trying to appeal to everyone, which is, if you have money and you have that kind of influence, kind of a smart strategy. But for the left, I think the big problem is that we have the Democratic Party. If we are all in with the Democratic Party, we're essentially entering a graveyard. Right? We're entering, as Sabby, you alluded to in the beginning, you're entering into something that is designed to basically suppress you, destroy you, and to do so in a way where you may not even understand that that's what's happening. And I think that's the big impediment that I've seen, is that the Democratic Party isn't going to give your movements money, and when it does, it's to make your movements not movements anymore, right? While the GOP is like, we're going to give our movements money because we're trying to build a grassroots establishment. Because one of the big things that Republicans have issues with, we have to be honest, is they have issues with numbers, right? Everyone I think overblows, like everyone's a Republican, like look how many votes Trump gets. But actually, the way Republicans stay in power is they have these voting shortages. That's why the electoral colleges exist. Like, they have these shortages in very key areas of the country, and just in terms of population numbers, where a popular vote would essentially render them a minority politically. So that's why they pour all this money into people, because they actually need people to be more active. While Democrats, they understand that people on the left will just fall to them when the going gets rough, right? We saw with Bernie Sanders. Bernie Sanders drops out 2016, 2020. Well, most people, what did they do? They didn't say, let's build a third party. They didn't say, let's organize everything. No, most people who were in a Democratic Party camp, even the farthest left, said, all right, I'm going to hold my nose. I'm going to vote for Joe Biden, and then we'll try again next time. And that kind of defeatism it cannot stand the weight of what the GOP can do, which is they're not, you said Ben Shapiro is not doing this, right? These folks, the Jay-Z's like, not a businessman, I'm a businessman. Like, they're all about their business, and the left is not disciplined in that way.
That's the correct word. Yeah. Not disciplined at all. No, like the left is always crying and whining and crying all the time. We can't get anything done like that. We can't always be talking about our feelings. We got to get some logistics. We got to get to the facts, people. We got to actually get some work done. And you have to get your ass out there and do stuff. Like, this is definitely one of the things that we've learned just doing this and supporting other people's efforts is that it's a lot of the same people who are called on or who end up showing up to the same things. And then these people get stretched thin. There's only so many places you can speak or do this. And it also does, it does keep our circle smaller, and I think that that's something that we are hoping to do at the camp, is kind of have these fireside discussions around each of these topics each night. And we want to put people up, up in the front to talk who don't normally get a chance to talk. because there's so many
That's a skill.
perspectives that when somebody might be good at this and they might start their own show, and then we can get some more people. And it just seems like everybody, like the left, it's like, instead of seeing that, okay, maybe we're the fun type of people on the left, and we'll go get people this way. Okay, right. And we're more academic, and we'll go get people this way. Instead of looking at it like this kind of symbiotic kind of being, they instead look at it like, I've got to be the head of this body.
That's the egoism, right?
Yeah, the ego. We need more arms. We need more.
Rather than paying it forward, exactly. Well, it is getting late, so let's actually get up the. I know that there's a fundraising page and there's also the Twitter page. So let me share both of those now on the screen, and I'll also put them in the chat for folks. Okay, so here's where you can support the efforts. I know you all are raising. If you want to talk about what you guys are doing in terms of, in terms of this part.
Well, we just literally just got back from the store today to spend some of the funds. We are raising money for, let's see, we did really well. We got enough tents. We got enough sleeping bags. We're going to donate some of the stuff after the camp, so it doesn't just go to waste, to mutual aids in New York and and to homeless folks in New York. And definitely every little bit helps. It's been very what's the word, uplifting, I guess. I don't know, we'll be having a down day, and it's great to see someone just donate $5 and be like, you guys are doing a good thing, or this is something that's really needed. It's okay, good, at least people see what we're doing. So I think we shut down the wish list probably. The wish lists are shut down. But any any further cash donations that we would get, we would use for, hopefully holding a bail fund just in case anything crazy happens, but I don't think so. But also just adding a little bit more activities to when we actually get to the camp. Maybe we can help people with some gas, this and that. We had to, there's so much that goes into it. There's a lot of driving in the Hamptons. So it's a very secluded place. We'll be doing shuttling, and we're going to be doing all communal meals. So, everything, all of that, all the money, basically, most of it's going to food and water, keeping people hydrated, because we're going to have nice weather. Danny, I don't know if you're listening. It's going to be nice, 80 degrees.
Nice weather. We're going to be next to a beach.
Only lows of 60. That's
one of our actions. Well, two of our actions actually are on the beach. So, so that's nice. But yeah, the Hamptons really, that's one thing, just about trying to disrupt in kind of an elite area. They're always going to try to put up barriers and try to keep you from being able to do things and try to keep you from being able to be there. So, that's what a lot of the funds have gone to.
Just those cost barriers. And also crafts. We'll be doing crafts and making camp shirts and kind of general camp things too.
And then on the Twitter, you'll be seeing this week, starting on Wednesday, I think, is our plan to start talking about our mirror actions. So, of course, not everyone can make it to the camp. So we're going to have a lot of actions that you can do, in your own town. There'll be everything from trash pickup to, we're also going to put the information about the prison letter writing.
For prison letter writing, we're working with this group called I Heart PAPS. So you can find them on Twitter if you're interested in being a pen pal long term with an inmate. It really helps, it just really helps, especially as they're cracking down on inmate prisoner mail and scanning everything, and just
it's really bad.
So much surveillance. So that's one really great organization you can get involved in. Another thing that we're doing is the QR codes.
QR codes, yeah, that'll be a fun one. That's something that you can do, while you're out having a couple brewskis on Labor Day.
You print them out on your own, and then the QR codes will go to different things about climate change. And the way that we made them look is it'll say, oh, Labor Day white party. And so then you paste that around in your area. Let's say you live in New York, and then people will be like, I want to go to a Labor Day white party. And guess what? You're finding out about this, revolution in Sri Lanka or something, Okay. Yeah, exactly. So now what?
Yeah, we found a really cool one that does, back on the prison thing, but a really interesting one that basically shows you life inside of a solitary confinement cell. So it's reality kind of thing. So that'll really freak people out, but we're just trying to kind of think of ways to just make people think and, leave them little leave behinds, so that they'll know that the poor people are coming for them eventually. They just don't know when and how.
Yeah,
It will
yeah.
be
Well,
later set for me.
I'm
All
gonna
right.
pull up the Twitter, but as you're talking about solitary confinement, I did my little grad school social work thesis on that, and I did
Mhm.
show a video of that to the seminar, because it's absolutely, I mean, the level of torture. I mean, people talk about Julian Assange, that's what he's enduring at Belmarsh, but this is something that 80,000 plus people are enduring every single day in the United States. 40+% of them being Black people. It's
Yeah.
like a form of absolutely just
Mhm.
like egregious torture. But no, that sounds all. I mean, people are gonna learn a lot. People are gonna learn a lot. That sounds really great. So here's the Twitter page. I'm gonna put this in the chat so you all can follow. Are
Oh,
you
I
guys
see.
going to be doing any like reporting out from there?
I
Well,
am.
Sabby's okay, great.
good.
We're
I'm
hoping.
gonna. I might do like little shorts because
Right.
I'm not sure about the signal, the Wi-Fi like
Right.
signal or whatever. But
Mhm.
then I'm also gonna just record some of the actions, edit it, and put that out when I get back.
Hell
Cool.
yeah. Yeah, we're going to try to record definitely the fireside chats at night because we want to kind of share those discussions, maybe like impromptu discussions. And we'll record like different actions that we do and share them later. So
Yeah,
Alright.
we've got a couple of like videographers and photographers coming, and I mean, and the idea is like really to like, you know, use everyone's skills to the best of their abilities and like make this like really cool so the people on the left to be like, oh, it is fun to do things
Get
outside of my
together.
house.
Oh, we're also going to be having people who can't come, like Zainab, who really helped us with our social media and everything. Unfortunately, she can't come at the last minute. And so she's going to, I think, do a live stream or a call in talking about climate change. So that'll be one of the nights as well. And that's, like people like JB who's in the chat who's helped us. There's just so many comrades who can't go, whether it be because they're disabled or because of the cost to get there or because just, they've got kids or families and life and work. So we definitely wanted to find a way to not leave anybody out. So please look out for those on our Instagram and our Twitter this week.
All right. Well, it is getting late for all of us. And I will will have to depart. People stick around. I have a few announcements before I go, but I just want to thank you both. Thank you to the Bank sisters, to Sabby, for coming on. I would come, but I did promise my wife I would go away with her. She's working overnights now, and this is like the first time in months that she's had a week off. So we are, going to be going away ourselves. So we'll be kind of living in the spirit of it. But definitely I'll be following, what you all are doing. And certainly, we'd love to have you back on to talk about the experience and any takeaways. So thanks so much.
Yeah, thank you so much for having us.
Thanks for having us. Definitely
Thanks,
appreciate it.
Danny.
Have a
No
good one.
problem.
Thanks.
Take care. Good
Bye.
night.
Good night.
All right. Stick around, everyone. Stick around. Okay. I will be on for another 5 to 10 minutes. Okay. Because I do have some announcements. So, as I said at that ending there, I am going away. I'm not bringing my equipment. Not sure if I'm going to be jumping on live at any point. I will have my laptop. I will have a headset because I do work from there. But I will be gone for a week. And so, I will be trying to get clips in, try to do that in the mornings, while while my wife is sleeping, get the YouTube channel active. I do have an article that I've worked on. Actually, it addresses some of these issues. Socialist patriotism to a degree, but really just this overall trend of what I'm seeing, which is kind of like, really a lot of distortions, what I call the sickness of the left in the United States and the path to recovery. So let me talk about that more theoretical piece, kind of understanding, which direction, how we should approach some of the things that you heard here with me on RBN earlier today. Some of that, all of that is kind of mixed in there with some more broader analysis. So look out for that on Substack. But yeah, no, I'm very close. I'm one subscriber, basically $5 per month away from my goal. $5 per month away. So please do, appreciate the super chats, but please do subscribe on Patreon for consistent, for a consistent way to support me moving forward, my writing, these videos, etc. A lot of interesting stuff coming up. Okay. A lot of interesting stuff coming up in terms of just editing this channel, getting up to speed, getting the design quality up to speed with the content quality. Certainly is something I'm going to be working on as well. Rockfin launch all coming up probably next month. All right. Okay, everyone. So with that said, I just want to thank those who gave me a super chat. Thank you, Roger Meadows. Write our single issue voters. We care about everything. Yes, we should. Yeah, so man, this chat is active. Good stuff, guys. Thanks for coming. Okay. Keep liking the video as you exit here. Okay, keep liking the video. We got a super sticker from David. Thanks so much. All right, so keep liking the video, hit that subscription, hit that subscribe button. Be sure to hit the notifications bell. Some people are saying they're not getting notified, which sucks. But here is, we had a question. Corona Earth said, will it be held yearly? I'm sure they're going to answer that question very soon. So thanks for the super chat nonetheless. With that said, everyone, good night. Take care. And I'll be with you all live probably in another week. Maybe I can jump on my phone or something if I can get a quick minute just to say, just to say what's going on, and give updates and all of that. Peace out, everyone. Bye-bye.